Hey everybody, welcome back to the Downpour, Emerald City Hockey, and Circling Seattle Sports, Seattle Torrent podcast. Charles, it's been a minute since we've been able to record. Schedules have just been all over the place for both of us, many things going on. But as we sit back down to do another episode of the Downpour and talk about this Torrent team, we kind of pick up with the Torrent right where we left off, with them at the bottom of the standings in the PWHL, currently with 22 points, trailing the last playoff spot, which would belong to the Ottawa Charge. They have 33 points, team that Torrent just played and lost 2-0 to. They're not eliminated yet, Charles, but it kind of feels like that game was their last good opportunity to get back into things.
Yeah, Don. First of all, it's great to be back. Second, yeah, no, I mean, like coming off of the Sirens game where, it maybe felt like the dam had broken. Kayla Barnes gets a goal. Kayla Barnes gets her first goal of the season. They score 3 goals in the first period. I don't have it verbatim, but I know they don't really score early, right? So to get that and kind of break through felt like maybe maybe it was this last month of the season thing, where they'd been talking about getting that late push. Maybe you go on this miraculous run. Um, not quite the case. I know we'll talk about it, I'm sure, but yeah, if you were gonna go on this sort of miracle like storybook ending sort of thing, I think you'd have needed to get going there and even like on the other side of things with hockey in this town, like even if you're just trying to chase that last spot, like it's very, very tight throughout the entire like 4 through 8. The top 3 are pretty set,
Yeah.
but the rest of it's gonna be a real fun race to watch from afar, watching from through the glass panel, because they will not be there.
Yeah. It's been a tough going. I mean, look, very beginning of the season, right? The expectation was set by the team, by head coach Steve O'Rourke, that they were going to kind of let things go in the beginning of the year, just work on getting better. They had their internal checkpoints to hit along the way, the last big one being the Olympic break, and then trying to make a big push at the end there. Did say they're going to try to make that big push during the final month of the season. I mean, I guess we're just now hitting that. It is April 1st at the time of recording here, so maybe they will just turn it on for the last 7 games that they have. But it does feel like that push, for whatever reason, hasn't really been coming for this team. They have not been getting kind of better as of late. Now there is many reasons for that, and we'll talk about what some of those may be. But looking at this team post Olympic break, I mean, you just look at their last 6 games. They've been shut out 3 times in their last 6 games. They have 6 total goals through their last 6 games, so only averaging 1 per game, which is just not enough to get it done. They've really been struggling as they come into this last month of the season, Charles.
Yeah, no, it's tough. Like you said, I mean, it's kind of daunting to look at that and think about the shutouts there. Like, and even still thinking about that, like we've acknowledged how good the goaltending is in this league.
Mhm.
Like Reagan Kirk in the Toronto game, she's had some great performances. Obviously, you deal with that's Aaron Frankel in that Fleet game. So I mean, like, what more can you say about Aaron Frankel that we haven't already said?
Yeah.
Uh, and then this last one with Gwyneth Phillips. Gwyneth Phillips is a very good goaltender. She might play on a Charge team that's kind of here and there, right? But she's still a very good goaltender. So, at the end of the day, that's not an excuse, right? I mean, the other teams seem to beat good goaltending, good enough, right? And yeah, like you said, and we were talking about this before we hit the big red record button. There just hasn't been a stretch where they started to really, truly, consistently click. There have been like mini spurts. Like it was nice to go into the Olympic break with that 6-4 victory over Toronto. You played a tight game against Boston, lost in the shootout the game before that. But that's 2 games, right? Um, yeah, there's a bunch of tight losses and then a win right after that. And that's kind of it, maybe early on you get the first 2 wins of the season, New York in that wild comeback, and then Ottawa the next game. You think, oh, in that in December 17th, after that win, that would have been your hope, right? Okay, they're clicking it. They had that game. They had back-to-back games with 2 power play goals. Like you get that power play going, but the consistency, unfortunately, hasn't been there. And a lot of the times, yeah, we come into this Ottawa game. I'm looking for a little juice, and they get shut out.
Mhm.
It's just tough. There hasn't been this sort of putting the pieces together, getting it rolling, stringing things out. It's just kind of been very stop and start. And to be fair, and I know you kind of alluded to it, there's been some stop and starts for your players in this regard as well. Um, with injuries, which is tough.
Yeah, definitely. That December 17th game against Ottawa, the 4-1 victory there, that was the last time that the Torrent were able to win games back to back. They have not strung together a winning streak at all. That's the only one all season, actually, is just those two games, December 3rd and then December 17th. So kind of, again, it's just been really hard for this group to build momentum, and then really it's sustaining that momentum that has proven to be just such a difficult task for them. But like you just said, injuries certainly a part of it now, coming out of the Olympic break, starting to get a little bit better. We're starting to get some players returning to the lineup, but injuries, as a lot of Torrent players went to the Olympics. Again, congratulations to all the Olympians that played from the PWHL, but especially the ones for the Torrent. And you had, 4 players go and win a gold medal, be very successful there. But it did come at a price. Hannah Bilka has been out since the Olympics. Hilary Knight was out until this last game since the Olympics. Many players have been banged up, returning from that. Grant Mentis is now on LTIR as well. So this Torrent team continues to run into attrition issues because of injuries, Charles. How much of that do you think is just the issues that they've had kind of post Olympic break? Is just, you get some players come back, some aren't able to go into the lineup, and then the ones that are able to go in the lineup, you have to wonder, based on how hard they all worked and played at the Olympics, if they're at 100%.
Right. No, I mean, yeah, it's kind of funny. We haven't recorded since kind of that break. Um, it's a factor, right? And I think we'll talk about the coaching in that regard, but
Hmm.
it's one of the main factors I think that makes it so hard to judge the season uh, in this crucial light because and you could see this coming. This was a expansion team with a lot of great names. Like I think you were saying this to someone during the Ottawa game. They're great on paper, but
Hmm.
obviously the games are not played on paper. This isn't like playing hangman. You're not playing a game on paper. Um, and yeah, I mean your captain Hillary Knight's out. You know, I will say I do have some confidence in her performance next year. Like Hillary's not someone, at least from folks that I've talked to have covered her before, not someone who likes change. So the Boston thing wasn't, she wasn't exactly thrilled to not be protected by Boston, as I've talked about. And year one from year two with the fleet, she saw a big offensive production jump. So I'm
Hmm.
hoping you can see that. Um, but yeah, to purely, go back to what you mean about, the injuries. Yeah, I mean, you come out of the gate still and you come back on February 27th against Toronto. You had a sold out building, if I
Yeah.
remember correctly, and you have a sold out building. You got all this juice going. You're bringing your Olympians back. I mean, you could just come off of a gold medal. Hannah Bilka was also injured. She's now done for the year, which is tough for her because it felt like she was one of your better producers as well, even though most
Hmm.
of it came on the power play. But even then, your power play has struggled too. This last game, they go 0 for 6. Yeah, I think it's undeniable. It's not an excuse. Like the issues go beyond, not having Hillary, not having Hannah Bilka, and now Bucky, which I am interested. I asked Steve after the Ottawa game. I said, "Hey," because she had done some power skating work in the practices leading up to the Ottawa game, and he wasn't super clear on if she was going to travel. As they go on a 4-game trip now. Um, but at least she was getting some power skating, and I imagine she joins them at some point during the road trip. And I don't mean to ramble, but it reminded me, about not having her come. Someone asked Steve O'Rourke, I believe it was pregame, about Jenna Buglioni. Buglioni's been a scratch. healthy scratch, at
Mhm.
least that we know of, the last few games. And the question was kind of, hey, what does Jenna need to do to put herself back in the line, right? And O'Rourke, he's provided some unique insight, Dylan, as you know.
Yeah.
Um, he thought that maybe they're trying to get her speed back, which is something if you watch her play at Ohio State, there was just a different level of speed than she's got right now. And I know Brian with Gloves Off Seattle has talked about this before. Like when we
Yeah.
saw her during the rivalry series break earlier this season, she kind of started to look like the player that they had drafted out of Ohio State. But she gets whacked, she deals with another injury, and she just kind of unfortunately hasn't looked the same since. And Steve said, "Hey, in retrospect, we probably after when she suffered that concussion, we probably should have kept her home, you know, and had her recover from there." Which is tough because you never know how long concussions can really linger, right? So yeah, I mean, you drafted her in the first round. I'm not saying she's going to be the best player on your team, but you drafted her in the first round. Like she was projected to be like a 3C, 4C, and we talked early in the year about what you can get from maybe your bottom six. If you get a healthy Jenna Buglioni the rest of the year, who knows? Maybe you do get some kick in production. Your other wingers on those lines get juiced up a little bit. You know, it's
Yeah.
and especially with Grant Mentis, her being out, she played some great games. Leading up to her being injured in that game against Minnesota. So, yeah, I don't. It's undeniable. You can say, oh well, they should have played better. You cannot accurately, I think, tell the story of the inaugural season without mentioning, hey, you had some, not that everybody is key to a team, so on and so forth, but you had some pretty key players, miss games and miss time throughout the course of the year. I think that's undeniably an important factor to mention.
Yeah, no, it's definitely part of it. I'm with you. It's probably not all of it, but it is
Right.
definitely a significant portion of it. I mean, you mentioned Jenna Buglioni. Yeah, this year has been tough with her. Only 3 games over 10 minutes of ice time. Many games under 5 minutes of ice time. So kind of tough situation there for your first round pick. Kayla Grant Mentis was, as you said, looking fantastic right before she got injured. Really unfortunate timing. Had just been moved up, was centering the second line with Danielle Serdachny. That line looked fantastic in that game against Boston at home at Climate Pledge Arena. The two of them really looked like they were playing off of each other well. They had good vision out there together. That line was very productive, able to stay in the offensive zone for long periods of time. And then, of course, very next game, Grant Mentis gets hurt and has been out ever since. So, just situations like that definitely lead to the lack of flow that I feel like the team has been able to get into, right? I mean, we talk about this team struggling to maintain momentum. I think all the injuries are a big part of that, right? When you're forced to shuffle your lines around as a
Right.
coach or as a team, it's never a spot that you want to be in, particularly for an expansion team where it's not like a lot of these players have years of
Yeah.
experience of playing with each other already, right? Like when your team is more established, you can kind of shuffle a winger here or there around a little bit because they've probably all played together at some point before. They've had years of practice experience with each other before. And so there's already some levels of familiarity there. They understand the play styles, they understand where to be on the ice for one another. That just never existed for this team to begin with. And then as you're already trying to find chemistry, you're then also having to make moves around injuries. It is not it's not a great spot to be operating from
Right.
when you're trying to set your lineup. So I also think the injuries have been a big deal for this group, particularly at the top end with Hillary Knight and Hannah Bilka, because yes, Hannah Bilka was so key to that power play. Just her ability to operate with speed and the extra time and space that is afforded to you as a player when you're out there with the player advantage. Hannah Bilko is just so great at dealing with that. And then Hillary Knight being, one of the few kind of power forwards in the PWHL, a player who very good at getting rebound chances, secondary chances, being able to take advantage of those. And I think on a team like this that has a lot of puck moving defenders. There's a lot of players on this blue line that are capable of, taking shots from the point and trying to generate offense that way. A lot of times, those offensive chances are not going to necessarily just come from that point shot. It's going to be a rebound or the secondary chance that shot from the point provides. And Hillary Knight is excellent at capturing those. And with her out of the lineup, didn't really feel like they had anybody else that they could go to that was good at that sort of thing. And I think that's been hurting them as well, and also on the power play hurting them.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, it's funny we mentioned those games that are so early on, but you did start to, and that's another thing that in my hockey infancy, I've learned your power play has to have some consistency, some continuity,
Yeah.
know where people want the puck, know the sort of movement, so on and so forth, right? And yeah, especially with the power forward. I mean, yeah, who else on your team, on your roster, is a real true power forward? I don't know if you can necessarily pick anybody out and say that. It's nice that you got a lot of players that I think can shoot the puck. But yeah, you don't necessarily have someone to say, I'm going to stick you in the front and I know that you can deal with tips or whatever. I feel like we've seen, and I know we haven't necessarily brought it up, but seen Teresa Shafsall kind of in those areas.
Mhm.
She always just seems to be in the right area.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know if I necessarily call her a true power forward, right? And especially not necessarily, it's unfair to stack her
Mhm.
up against Hillary Knight, but that's the point, right? It's not like you're just going to slide her in. It is interesting to see them on the same top line now. Um, but yeah, no, I think it very much, you kind of illustrate my point of, you know, these injuries, they're not the full story, but they certainly play a key piece into this overarching like tree of issues. It all kind of, I hate to use this, it all kind of trickles down in a way,
It
you
does.
know. Because yeah, like again, expand in a perfect world where they stay healthy throughout the year. I think we're in a certainly in which obviously doesn't happen in hockey, but we're in a much different spot right
Mhm.
now because again, Jenna Buglione leads that bottom line. Yeah, okay, because right, you had the Snodgrass, Bucky, a Gia line that had started to start clicking. Then
Yep.
that has to get broken up with some issues with injuries. Jesse Eldridge had kind of been doing everything on her line. Yeah, no, I think it's and I do say maybe there's some positives in changing things up. Like Daniel Serdachny looks much better um, in the second half of the season
Mhm.
on the wing. Maybe take some more responsibility away from her as the center. Um, but yeah, no, that my main point. I apologize. Is yeah, you can't tell that story of this year and why they're in this position, right?
Right.
Without, hey, you lost some key pieces and you had to shuffle things around. And it's also why I don't think you can fully say, Steve O'Rourke is to blame here. I'm like, he's, the coaching staff's hands are kind of tied when you're like, you can't just say, hey, Hillary, I need you to heal up. You
Yeah.
know, MCL needs to be good. Hannah Bilka, whatever you had operated on, come on, let's go. It's tough. I think it's difficult, which is unfortunate, but it's also not like, we're talking about a team that's 40 years in and hasn't won a Walter Cup. This is year one,
Yeah.
you know.
There's some wiggle room there. But yeah, I mean, you look at game before last, before Hillary Knight was able to return, you down essentially three top six forwards for that game with Knight, Bilka, and Grant Mentis out, right? Like that was your top six that you were working with, and they're all gone. That's just a tough spot for anybody to find themselves in. It's just going to be hard. Um, Outside of the injuries that have been shaking up the lineup, there was a trade you've already mentioned of both players involved in the trade there. But the Torrent do make a pretty significant trade, especially at the time of the trade, trading Jesse Eldridge to the Boston Fleet, and coming back the other way is Teresa Schaffzal. And this was a real head scratcher at the day of, Charles, and not just for you and I, but it seemed like for all Torrent fans, because Jesse Eldridge really coming out of the Olympic break was going into it too, was the engine that was kind of driving the offense of this team. I mean, she was kind of going out there and she was the one getting breakaways and scoring on those. She was the one playing net front, net side, and scoring on those opportunities. She was the one that was always in the right place at the right time, and somebody capable of producing for you in different situations. And for them to move on for Jesse Eldridge was very, very surprising to say the least.
Yeah, and you know, as I've told you, like from what I understand, this came together really fast.
Mhm.
You know, like I don't think there's ever been any sort of hey, the Torrent are going to go and shop, any their players because if they were, they probably would have moved more than just one player out of the way.
Yeah.
With a deadline coming 2 days ago now, by the time we're recording this. Yeah, I was in Arizona in spring training. I had just gotten back to my hotel. I get a text, hey, something's happening with Boston and Seattle. I go, oh, great. This is wonderful. And then 10 minutes later, the email comes through, and I was like, I did not expect Jesse Eldridge
Nope.
to be the forward. You know, it would be tough to lose a number of these players, uh, but I didn't expect her considering the way she was producing, right? And she had started to click, right? Because no, Dylan, we had talked early in the season about how we're not worried at the early production or lack thereof that she had had, and it has just started to click for her, which was
Hmm.
great. Um, it's fascinating, and you and I have kind of, I guess, where are you with like, oh, oh no, I think we missed it. There was supposed to be a virtual availability, I think, with both of them, but and
Mm.
GM Megan Turner, shoot. But I was gonna say I don't know if we had ever really heard. Yeah, that came and went nuts. Um, shoot, like the wording from the press release, and then what Steve had said, because I asked Steve over pregame ahead of the Ottawa game. I said, "Hey, what have you seen from Teresa Schaffsal and Gabrielle David, who they signed from the Swedish league? I think it's the SDHL." And they both mentioned like playing the type of hockey they want to play, right? Um, which is interesting because like you don't obviously, as you mentioned with the shutouts, you don't have a lot of goal scoring currently. And Jesse Eldridge had been doing that. I think a lot of people, as fans do, which I'm not at all like downplaying, but had really kind of fallen in love with Jesse because of, the story behind the pink scrunchie and the fact that she was actually producing. Yeah, I don't know. It's just all kind of a head scratcher. I guess I get it. I think Shafsal does play the style of hockey they want more than Eldridge does. But also, you're scoring goals. I think you said this. If someone's like actually producing, maybe you want to play how they're playing. Um, yeah, I think I might try to find out more about the availability. But did you have any further thought on this trade and maybe why it went down? Because my only speculation was, hey, you think looking at the contracts, if I can find it. Yeah, she was only signed through this season. Maybe you thought she wasn't going to be here or wouldn't want to come back, after however many teams come through expansion this upcoming round.
That was my thought on it. I have not been able to get anything else as far as what went down that caused it. I think that ultimately, yeah, it was probably just a stylistic fit. They feel that Shafzal gives them a better, just a better chance to go out there and win games. And quite frankly, look, it's not like she hasn't produced since being in the lineup. 4 points in 4 games with the Torrent so far. The fit is definitely there. I feel like there's a little bit of an added speed element to her game
Mhm.
over Jesse Eldridge's that I feel like complements what the Torrent are trying to do right now, and maybe some of what they feel like they've been lacking this year. So I think that's a little bit part of it. Um, but yeah, no, I don't have uh, a for sure this is what was going on. But I do feel like they needed to get somebody that could play similar to what they lost in Hanabilka, right? A player
Mm,
who's going to be able to get up the ice quickly, somebody who's going to understand when to dip in and out of the slot, somebody who's going to be able to kind of dance around the offensive zone. And I feel like this trade was kind of built to address that a little bit, and somebody who can kind of match Alex Carpenter's speed and skill
right.
style game, because as much as Julia Gosling has fantastic shot, Hillary Knight, one of the best power forwards to ever do it, all of that kind of stuff, it's felt like at times on that top line Alex Carpenter has been alone in her play style, how she wants to go out there and attack the offensive zone, how she wants to cycle and play kind of down low and in and around the net. They haven't had somebody to necessarily do those things with her. Shafzal plays that kind of style, and you can already see there's some like early chemistry between the two when it comes to that. So I also wonder how much of it was just finding a good wing fit for Alex Carpenter.
Yeah, no, and it's a good point. That's something we've kind of talked about throughout the season. Like, hey, when they're shaking up the lines, maybe so and so will actually, as they've shifted, because there have been shifts along the wing.
Yes.
Maybe this player will actually be able to keep up with her. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Um, yeah, no, it's interesting. Don't get me wrong, I like the player. It is funny because I think Teresa had actually scored in the Boston game
Yeah.
against Seattle here when the Torrent won that game. Uh, I think that was her first goal this season. I was like, oh, great. Like, um, yeah, no, it's interesting. Interesting. I don't think that this was something else too. I don't think. Oh no, there was. Sorry, she's got 3 goals on the season.
Hmm.
I don't think there was any like. I don't. I don't. Don't think it necessarily needs to be said, but there were folks like, oh, she might have wanted out, and maybe there was infighting. I was like, this, like, unfortunately, as we like have talked about what's led to this, this is a tight group. Like from
Yeah.
everything we can see and hear doing like features and interviews and stuff, right? Like this group loves each other, you
Hmm.
know. Which like so I don't think it's a chemistry issue in that regard. Like on the ice and knowing where to be and all that. It's a different story. But yeah, I don't think Jesse like wanted to be out of here. I'm sure she's thrilled she goes from the bottom of the standings to the top and will, have a very good chance to win the Walter Cup this year. Um, but yeah, I don't think that factored into it. I do think, yeah, like I as much as fans won't like it, I do think it was more of a fit uh thing, which is kind of interesting again, because Jesse Eldridge was scoring a lot of goals. So you would say, hey, why are you doing this? Um,
Yeah.
But like just watching her for the first time, like truly paying attention, because I know she had been here with Boston in person, she does seem to be in the right places, the kind of little things player, right? Um, so that's fun. Like I'm sure, if you're able to get her back next year, because she is, from what I understand here, if I click on the little thing, just on the 1 year deal.
Yep.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe you can sell her on Seattle. She's young. She's only 25. Um, you know, I don't know. That like certainly a player that could fit in your middle six, right? Or well,
I think
depending
so.
on how the offseason goes, maybe she's on the top line. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe she's up there with Hillary. So yeah, I don't know. It's certainly very interesting um,
It-
to look at that, and I don't know if we'll ever kind of figure out if there's a true reason, so on and so forth, about why that trade went down. Right?
yeah. No, and look, sometimes trades just happen like that, and
Yeah.
and that's the way things go. But yes, I mean, Jesse Eldridge, as successful as Jesse was playing with the Torrent, and obviously scoring lots, um, had the nice 3 game goal streak and all of that. Uh, Jesse Eldridge was largely doing a lot of that on her own. It felt like at times,
Right.
right? Like it wasn't a ton of Eldridge fitting in with the line, and like things are really clicking, and it's all kind of working the way that it was supposed to. It was a lot of Jesse Eldridge is in the right spot as the rebound came out, or Jesse Eldridge was able to break free and get out there on a breakaway, or the clearing attempt, and she was able to wrangle it and go out there and down the ice and score. And obviously all goals are a team effort to an extent, right? So I'm not trying to take away anything from anybody else, but it really did feel like a lot of it was Eldridge just kind of figuring out different things in the moment and kind of making it happen, which, that's what skilled players do. She's a very skilled
Right.
player. More power to her. But like, just to kind of highlight how that may not be what, Megan Turner, Steve O'Rourke, what everybody kind of wants for this Torrent team, and might have viewed it as a little bit unsustainable. Maybe they're trying to
Mhm.
sell high on Jesse Eldridge because her line mates were not keeping up with her production at all, right? Serdachny was not necessarily keeping up with that production. Julia Gosling definitely at that point had been kind of moved down to that second line, definitely wasn't keeping up with that production. And that's another player who's really been having a tough time here, not just since the Olympic break, but even before that as well. But Julia Gosling only has one assist in her last 7 games. That's her only point in her last 7 games. And she hasn't scored a goal, Charles, since January 20th. It is an 11-game goalless streak that Julia Gosling has, a player who has a fantastic shot, is a shooter. I do think she's trying to round out her game. We talked earlier about how Hillary Knight feels like the only power forward. Does feel like Julia Gosling is going to the net front more, using her
Mm.
body, trying to get screens, things like that. If you go and look at the highlight of Kayla Barnes's first goal of the season from a couple games ago, right? She's net front, back to the goaltender, makes a great pass over to Kayla Barnes for an easy tap in for Barnes because of the play that Julia Gosling makes there. That is her 1 point in the last 7 games. But I also wonder if it was, look, as great as Jesse Eldridge was playing, the rest of the team, the cohesion, the stuff that is more sustainable, it's just not all clicking right now for everybody. And we need to try to find a way to shake things up there. And I think Julia Gosling, more than anybody, needs something to kind of, start going her way, because the numbers for her recently have been brutal after a great start to the season.
Yeah, no, that would she was someone I was really interested in that regard, just because, like, when we did the 10 games in, she had been playing really well. She was like at I believe she was at a point per game pace, which, funny enough, I pulled this up late, and I'm not trying to go back there. Teresa Schaffsal is at 4 games played with the Torrent and 4 points. And, back to Gosling though, and you mentioned this. How much does that top line that was in Gosling, Carpenter, Knight changing maybe kind of change things? Because we had talked to Steve O'Rourke 10 games in and said, hey, you know that had been working at the time, and then they had gone to the Bilka Carpenter Knight thing. Why did you change things? Steve, come on, man, figure it out, Steve. And he had mentioned how happy he was with Julia finding her own play, making her own play, finding her confidence. And yeah, since the and even I was going to say since the Olympic break, she played well in the Olympics. Like, she was
Mm-hmm.
one of Canada's better forwards. There were
Yeah.
folks who don't watch the tour saying, "Hey, why is Julia Gosling in the bottom six? Why have you not moved her up?" I think she had one game with Marie Philippe Poulin, and it worked well. And then they shoot, what's his name? Was it Troy Ryan? Is that the Canada
I
auto
think
coach?
so. Yeah.
It's like, "Hey, Troy, what are you doing?" There was once yeah, it's Troy.
Mhm.
I saw him at the Iceplex before the Toronto game, since when they came back from the Olympics, and I was so tempted to say, "Hey, how come you didn't play Julia Gosling more?" But I wanted to not get thrown out of the building. Um, it's tough, because there are ebbs and flows in the season, right? She's a young player. She
Mhm.
is she is
Just turned
25 also.
25. Yeah.
Goodness. So I think there's some of that possibly in there. Yeah, she is the only other 5'11" forward that you have besides Hillary Knight. So it makes sense she'd maybe want to go in that front, use some of the body, in that regard. But yeah, as you mentioned, lead shot, we saw that on night one in
Yep.
Vancouver. And I don't think it's without a lack of trying. There are some games where I think I've looked at the shots, and Julia's like 5 up somewhat consistently. And I'm like, hey, so you're trying. Like,
Mhm.
oh, well, one against Ottawa isn't certainly what you'd like.
No, but five
Yeah,
the game before that,
right,
not too long ago, beginning of March, had a game with 10 shots on goal.
right. So like, yeah, you look at this and you're seeing it there. Yeah, since she's gone goalless, I mean, four at Ottawa, five against Toronto, 10 at Ottawa, five at New York. I'm not at, that was a home game.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't think it's without a lack of trying, but yeah, I mean, sport can be cruel in that regard, right? Where sometimes you just, as Steve said, we're going to bring up a Steve quote again. Sometimes they just don't get the bounces,
Mhm.
and I do think they're like the team. Some things that are playing into it, like maybe not having some of the better distribution, like from a Carpenter, or maybe the playmaking that opens up things like playing on a line with Hillary Knight, right? Like certainly that opens some things up for you. Um, yeah, I think that's another byproduct, though, that we're going to go back to it, though. The injuries affect this because in
They
an
do.
ideal world where you're able to keep things the same, we're probably not having this conversation. We're probably talking about, wow, Julia Gosling is like a 30-point scorer or something like that,
Yeah.
which is tough. But yeah, I think the changes probably affect that because again, it's certainly obviously not for a lack of trying.
Right. I'm also surprised that she still just has the one power play goal this year. Really thought with
Which
her
is
shot
wild.
that would be a place for her to really kind of be able to take over. But it's never really worked out that way. Pulling back a little bit to look at the team as a whole, you mentioned the quote from Steve about just not getting bounces. I mean, this Torrent team is almost tied in last place when it comes to shooting percentage
Oof.
in the PWHL, only shooting at 6.8%. The only team worse is Toronto at 6.7%. But I mean, this is, very, very low shooting percentage. I think some of that is luck. Some of that's going to be the injuries. Some of that's going to be the fact that you're an expansion team. And so you don't have the chemistry. You're not going to be having your players be able to necessarily always make the most dynamic play that's going to, lead to a higher quality chance, stuff like that. I think some of this is because they rely on shots from their D a lot,
Mm.
which are just going to be lower percentage shots to begin with. So there's a lot there, but I do think that low shooting percentage, I mean, it kind of backs up the fact that they haven't been scoring goals. And, I'm sure some of it is luck. Hockey teams tend to do this. Some years you'll shoot well above normal, other years it'll be well below. And some teams just kind of roll with it that way. But it has meant that they have struggled offensively, and I do wonder how much of that is the expansion team and the injuries and the ever changing lineup, and how much of it is just bad luck. We'll never know, but it is something worth bringing up, I feel like.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, there's not. I think I said this to you during the third period of the Ottawa game where they were down by a goal still at the time. Um, as as Montreal just clinched their playoff spot and Vancouver remains in seventh. The other expansion team not getting too much better luck. We haven't necessarily seen one of those goals where like the Kraken, you guys, you and RJ, I think it's mainly RJ, have the team of destiny bit kind of going on with the
Mhm.
Kraken because they get these breaks, which is great. Perhaps I'm forgetting because the season has felt long. Like I'm sad that it's ending, but it has felt like we've been here for a while.
Mhm.
Tell me how many times like the Torrent honestly got a bounce, got a break, got something to go their way. We're like, ha, they should take advantage of that or they're lucky. It doesn't feel. I really can't honestly tell you. It's so many times where the puck just hasn't gone their way. It's bounced. Oh shoot, the game where Jesse Eldridge should have had a hat trick.
Yeah.
Like a little bit of luck and that goes in and we're tied and this game has changed,
Right.
right? Yeah, again, I talk about the factors. Like I don't know how much I'd really put that one in there, but it certainly helps a bounce or two.
Mhm.
Because as the point is, I don't like saying a team sucks,
Yeah.
because when you're a beat writer, when you're around these people consistently, it's tough. But you look at it, if I could count, and I won't waste our time and count because that would be a whole to do. But there are a number of games I look here that are decided by just one goal.
Mhm.
You know, um, a bounce changes that. Even two goals, a bounce can certainly change that because I have to factor for empty netters, of course, right? Um, A bounce can change a lot of these games. And with the standings and, with, overtimes and shootout losses and then the 3 points in this league, right?
Yep.
Totally, totally different season. So yeah, again, I think there are a multitude of like important factors that make this season complicated. It's not just, oh well, they suck, or oh well, they were injured. Like there's a lot that goes into this. Um, that also might just be my attention deficit disorder and me trying to go in different directions, right? But I truthfully do think there's a lot that goes into this, and I don't want to, you know, that's a question. I don't know if you'd want to answer it, but I do wonder, Dylan, how you think the Torrent, figure out what they're going to do. Coaching staff wise. So they say, hey, Steve O'Rourke and this staff, Christine Bumstead and Clayton Beatos, like
Mhm.
there were some good things, but maybe they do say, if it's a presser or whatever before year two, right? We just didn't the shooting percentage, we just didn't get a lot of bounces. We had to deal with an injury to our captain, to one of our really talented players, two of our really talented players, and Bilka and Bucky, and they run it back with the staff. Or maybe they're more cutthroat in a way and they say, nope, it didn't work. We got to get something. You know, I do wonder how much of, especially with Hillary saying, hey, I want to play in Seattle for 2 more years, how much like, hey, Hillary, what do you
Yeah.
think? Steve O'Rourke, you know? But yeah, we've been asked, you and I have been asked that specifically.
Yeah.
Hey, do you think Steve O'Rourke has done a good job coaching this hockey team or something along that? And as you can kind of tell with how much I blabber, it's tough for me to put a definite answer there because I don't think it's not just, 1 to 1.
Right. It's none of these elements individually, right?
Right.
Injuries, bad luck, and coaching, like none of those things individually is the reason why the Torrent have struggled so much this year and do find themselves at the bottom of the standings. I think, we've talked about the injuries. I do think there's some bad luck going on with that shooting percentage because it is just so low. But yeah, I think there has also been some decisions made from coaching perspective that I haven't always agreed with. I think largely Steve O'Rourke has done a good job. Definitely a big fan of how candid he is with us on the media side of things. Definitely going to say that I am biased because of that, right?
Yep.
I love how much information he gives and his willingness to talk to all of us. That is something that I will not deny. I think you start digging into it and you go, okay, why has this team struggled so much? And you look at some of the numbers beyond shooting percentage. Look, they have an average power play, which is fine. Like it's fine where it is. I'm not using average as a bad thing. It's better than four other teams in this league. So you're technically in the top half when it comes to power play. And same thing with the PK. You're better than four teams in
Mhm.
this league, right? Those things I think for a first year expansion club, especially factoring in the injuries and everything, that says a lot. And that is coaching, right? Special teams definitely comes down to coaching and what you're able to do there. So they are getting the most out of their group in those areas, which is something. So that kind of takes one thing away that could lead to this being a coaching problem, so to speak. Otherwise, I look at things like they lead the league in blocked shots per game, kind of living up to that physical presence that he's
Mm.
been preaching and wanting all along. It goes to the maybe though that's one of those things. It's one of those volume metrics where it means you're spending a ton of time in your zone, right? Because you can only block shots when you're in your own zone.
Yeah.
So it's one of those that like I always kind of view it with a grain of salt, but I do think that they are coached well defensively sometimes and are able to kind of play to that structure. But the other times, and the big thing for me when it comes to what Steve O'Rourke has done this year is the deployment, the usage, and the perennial forever green light that he has given
Ah,
his defensive
yeah.
players. And I do think that has gotten them into trouble more than it has helped. And by that I mean, and we know this because we've talked to several of them and kind of talked about this. If you don't remember talking
Right.
to Anna Wilgren about this, and I know reading stuff that you've put out sounds like this has been kind of the thing with other defenders that they have. they're given the ability and the freedom to pinch up in the offensive zone and try to contribute there, to try to break the puck up the ice and attack with the team in transition, to roam in the defensive zone
Mm.
and go a little far away from the net front, to if they think that they can go and make a play and try to get that puck up the ice. And while I love how aggressive that is, and I think that this blue line, has a ton of really talented puck movers on it and players that are able to skate at a really high level and are able to go out there and make those plays. I feel like it has not helped the offense as much as it feels like it has hurt the defense, because we're sitting here and we're talking, we spent the first half of this podcast talking about, oh, the offense isn't there, the offense is struggling, right? If the whole system is built around the idea that your D is supposed to be helping contribute to the offense, and they're taking chances at times to contribute to the offense, and the offense is as stagnant as it is, it's not working, right? Like at some
Right.
point you have to just say, I don't think this is working. And you can't really do that if you're a team. You're kind of at this point in the season, you're kind of committed to it. You can start
Yeah.
reining it in a little bit, but it's not like you're going to install a whole new system, especially in an expansion year and everything like that, right? But I do think that that has been one thing that was a big part of the system that he's worked really hard with these players to install on the year, and I think that they are executing it, you know, it, to the best of their abilities. I just think at the end of the day, it's kind of proven out to be the wrong call. I think it's just one where the risk reward ratio hasn't been favorable in practice, right? Like, and I don't mean at KCI in practice. I mean when deployed out in games. In practice,
Right.
it just hasn't really worked out for them. And so I do think that as much as I think there's elements of everything, for me, the big thing on the coaching front has just been he wanted this team to be aggressive, particularly on the blue line, and they are. It just hasn't worked out.
Yeah, and so something actually, a question now that I have for you, in thinking about this is, do you think that the staff and obviously maybe general manager Megan Turner saw the decor that they were able to put together, with mobile defenders, obviously Caleb Barnes, Anna Wilgren, and Edith Terlova can get mobile. She's obviously on one of their power play units. Um, it's funny because she's not really anymore. She's, when talking to her, she's tried to be more of a, we're going to use this, the defensive defenseman
Mhm.
sort of thing. But with Lindy Lebdet, like she grew up as a, offensive minded defender. Um, so not necessarily factoring in her, but I'm sure the coaching staff knew that and thought of it. Do you think the staff and maybe ownership, the front office saw that and said, "Hey, look what we have here. Let's get them involved. Like let's, I don't necessarily think they came in, before we ever get a draft, right? And say, hey, like we're gonna want our D to be mobile. I wonder how much of that. Hey, here's our, maybe that's a simple answer for you, but I just maybe it just kind of clicked in my head. It was like, hey,
Yeah.
they saw what they had and they wanted to be a bit more. It's funny that I mention all those names and leave Megan Carter out, despite the fact that she has a breakaway goal.
Yes.
Um, you know, but I just do wondering about that, and the other half of that is, it's why I think that, you know who knows what we're looking at on the blue line next year, but why I'd like to keep Lindy Lebdell, just because I know she is someone that can stay at home, and maybe if you need her to be able to move around a little bit, provide some versatility, because she's like, expansion teams, however many that there are, or teams that want to take these players in free agency, probably won't look at Lindy Lebdell. They'll look
Mhm.
at, I gotta look at now the free agent list. They'll look at, yeah, how
There's
I
gonna be
was,
a lot of other names out there, yeah.
yeah, Tara Lova, Emily Brown, Megan Carter, Mariah Keppel. Like, you've got Kayla Barnes signed. Um, she signed a 3-year deal. Wilgren signed through next season. Lobdell is a restricted free agent next year. Um, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Makes me kind of think.
No, I do think that that was part of it. Like, because, go back to the beginning of the year, I mean, we talked about this blue line on paper looked like the best in the PWHL. And
Mhm.
a big part of that was because you had so many players that were going to be dynamic with the puck and be able to lead your team on breakouts, going to be able to play on the power play. They're going to be able to help contribute, from the perimeter in the offensive zone. And I do think that they wanted to lean into that. I mean, anytime, yeah, you're bringing in players like Caleb Barnes, Anna Wilgren, Neda Terralova. I mean, these are players that are known for being dynamic offensive defenders. And again, they're still very skilled. They have been able to contribute this year. They have been able to do things. It just feels like, breakouts in hockey, breaking the puck out of your zone and doing it in a way that can set up an offensive attack is one of the most difficult things that teams do. It is the thing that happens the least for you, right? You attempt it every time you try to get out of the defensive zone, and it rarely works. It's only going to work a handful of times for you throughout the course of a game. It's something that coaches run drills for all year long because you
Mhm.
need it to be muscle memory for your players. You need it to be all of those things. And I think that for an expansion team, it was rough because of the injuries. It's been rough for all the reasons that we've talked about. Everybody struggling. It's been rough for this blue line and for the team as a whole to really get that down. And I feel like if you're going to run a system that's built to play a little risky in the defensive zone at times in order to try to set up those breakouts, this is the reality that you sometimes have to live with, or that you maybe knew you were going to have to live with year one. And maybe this is where some of that conversation at the beginning of the year of like, look, we're just taking it a day at a time and we are going to
Right.
wait till the end of the year and all of that stuff comes in, is because maybe internally their own timeline and kind of how they knew they were going to play and what it was going to take was that, look, we want to play an aggressive system. We want to play an aggressive style. It is going to be something that everybody needs to be on the same page for in order for it to work. And that's going to take time as an expansion club. They probably weren't predicting as many injuries as they ended up having everywhere, right? And it's just one of those things where it just hasn't clicked for them. And in the future, maybe it does, right? Steve O'Rourke comes back next year. A lot of these players come back next year and it all works. They have the familiarity with each other. They get a proper training camp, all that stuff. And they go out there and they're able to be one of the fast, dynamic teams in the PWHL, score a lot more, have that offense there. And that just changes the dynamics on things. But, to the point you made earlier about a lot of the 1-goal games and stuff, it does feel like, if you're playing this aggressive system and style and having this mentality, you want your players to have this mentality where they feel free to go out there and make those plays. It feels like you should be on the other side of at least some of these 1-goal games. Like that's where the bad luck seems to kind of come into it for them, where it just feels like every single time it ends up not working out for them. And I
Mhm.
don't think it's because of the skill level of the players involved. They have supremely skilled players. It's just it's been hard to get everybody on the same page at any given point in time. Whereas if Steve O'Rourke had come in and put in a very bare bones basic system, right? Maybe something similar to what you see in the Olympics, because those teams don't
Mm.
always have a ton of time with each other. So you kind of keep it simple, right? I do wonder if, some of these games, some of those 1-goal games do get flipped. The shooting percentage is a little bit more normal instead of being so low, right? And some of that stuff kind of takes care of itself, and this team has a few extra points in the standings just because they aren't trying to do too much too soon.
Yeah. I went and counted. There are 9 games decided by just 1 goal.
It's nearly half of all the games they've played.
Yeah, not good, not
Yeah, that's
good. It
tough.
could go through the 2 goals. Yeah, no, and that's something I'm certainly interested in, because your talent will maybe be a little bit more spread out, but yeah, you'll get folks who maybe understand things a bit better. I wouldn't imagine that Caleb Barnes, if she stays here, because she is signed for 3 years, but that doesn't mean anything necessarily depending on expansion. I don't think Caleb Barnes will continue to have years where she just scores like 1 goal. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? That doesn't seem like something that's normal, so to
Yeah,
say,
and
player that she is. Uh,
And have 3 points over 2/3 of a way through a season. Yeah, it's
right,
that's
and
not her.
knowing the play that she drives, like quarterbacking the power play, the ice time, she eats up so much ice time. She
Mhm.
does so much for you. Yeah, that just doesn't seem right. um, so yeah, no, it's a good point, and I should have seen that coming because it's something you've mentioned all year, is how much they're like, because I truly, like, if we had the time to sit here and pick out the goals against that
Mhm.
came because someone had jumped in, or there's a miscommunication because someone had gone out of, there's a good amount of, I remember a lot of them happening, unfortunately, right in front of my eyes.
Yeah.
uh, so yeah, it's another one of those factors. It's not, there's no, as you mentioned, there's no one of these issues that's an individual, like, you can point at and say, yep, that's why. That's it. You know. So
Yeah. No, I mean, almost every breakaway goal against this year, it feels like has been coming off of a defender pinch where they've stepped up and tried to make an aggressive play in the offensive zone. That gamble hasn't paid off, and then the chance starts coming back the other way. And um, again, they haven't gotten any good luck to go with that, right? Like it feels like a lot of those chances end up getting converted. But it just kind of goes to show what that's about. And yeah, it just feels like for whatever reason those chances just haven't really come together for them this year. As to the future, um I don't think they're going to make a coaching change. I don't know anything though, but I know that
no,
that's been something that's been talked about and floated around the Torrent fandom. I think you always have to give coach more than a year unless the players really dislike them, which I don't get the sense that that's the case here. I think you need to give a coach time to really work, properly install systems, not have the Olympics disrupting a season and having players' minds kind of focused on that and everything. Like,
oh
there's so much going on. Yeah.
yeah, this is another thing, because when we were asked about the coaching, and Steve O'Rourke, like, I truly cannot undersell, like, all six of the Olympians. Um, like, they're all gunning for gold. It's all like wonderful to represent your country. For Julia Gosling in Canada, you know, it's very brutal, because Canada's been a
Mhm.
powerhouse for years, and they obviously very, very truthfully need to shake things up. Troy Ryan. um, for Neda Terlova, she was banged up for most of the year leading up to that, but she's able to get healthy, and Captain Czechia. And while they didn't do much in the Olympics, they still were a tough out.
Yep.
And then the U.S., like, with it being Hillary's last Olympics, and she kind of leaves the door open, but come on. Uh, mm, um, you know, yeah, the mental weight of, hey, this is my teammate. If you're Hannah Bilka and it's your first time in the Olympics, first time you're representing, Team USA, and you're playing with Hillary Knight, who there's the pictures to prove it. Like, you looked up to her,
Mhm.
like the weight of, I want to help you go out right. Alex Carpenter, who's played with her a good amount on the international stage, I want to help you go out right. Kayla Barnes, who's already won a gold medal before, but again has been um, someone I watched at practice when I saw Hillary going through full participant. When I was like, I was texting Dylan, I was like, I think she's playing. Um, she's the one, like, when they started to do board battles, I think, kind of test, see if she was good to go. It's Kayla Barnes and her talking to each other. Like, I don't think you can discount the mental weight of not just representing your country alone in an Olympics, let alone doing it for one of the greatest, like, trying to help one of the greatest players in the sport's history to win it. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of mental weight that comes into that. So that's another one of my big pillars. Like, it's injuries, it's that the Olympics playing such a role, and it is kind of those are kind of like my three pillars of why I can't say, hey, yes, definitively Steve O'Rourke did a bad job coaching, or yes, definitively this season's a failure. Like, it's so black and white to me because of kind of those major elements. And then you add them all together, and it's like, wow, now I see why we're kind of in this. I come away, Dylan, like, and I'm getting ready to, like, don't get me wrong, I love talking about this team. It's
Yeah.
great. Like, we enjoy doing this a lot. But it's like I come in here and I'm like, I don't know what to think about this team. Like I really
Yeah.
don't. I can't say you're like terrible because I don't think you're truly terrible. Some of the Sirens teams in years past where they really were at the bottom of the league, a little different. Like this team, though, I don't think they're terrible. I
Mhm.
really don't. You know,
Would you say that they've had a torrent of misfortune? There we go. We're just at the hour mark. I finally broke Charles. That'll be it
you
for the
know,
pod.
for my if we're gonna have to go through a torrent of misfortune, I'm gonna float away on my souvenir
There we go. There we go. Perfect.
torrent
No.
of misfortune. Is that gonna be the title of the episode?
Yeah, it should be. But that's no, that's the way it's felt in a lot of ways this year. Again, I think there's been some stuff that has been within their control and that they've
Right.
struggled with, but when you factor else everything else in from the being an expansion team, the Olympic year stuff and the breaks for rivalry series leading up to the Olympics and
Yeah.
everything too, right? Like just never quite able to get into a rhythm as a new club and a new group together. The injuries coming out of the Olympics where you were supposed to finally have a stretch of time with no distraction and the ability to come together as a team being disrupted by that, the fact that you haven't gotten any breaks, any bounces, any of that kind of stuff, right? It really does all come together and kind of lead to where the team is here at the bottom of the standings. Not technically eliminated yet, but I think we all kind of know what the situation is with them, and we'll see how early the notice for the draft stuff starts, right?
Right.
Because once
Which is a
once they
good point
are,
because they got to start. They haven't figured it out yet, but they're going to have to because the
yes,
gold plan is going to kick in. And you're going to start. Like it's great that Hillary. Like that's why you can't just say, "Oh, just let Hillary like call it a season." Like no, you're going to need her to start collecting points. Like you got to figure it out.
yeah. Yeah, for those who
So
don't know, the PWHL uses a gold rule draft system where once a team has been eliminated from the postseason, they start every time they win or accumulate standings points. Those points go towards picking first in the draft, and whoever has the most points of those teams ends up picking first. And given the fact that the Torrent are 5 points back of both the Sirens and the Golden Eyes, they should reach that point, with a little bit of a cushion over some other teams and give them the ability to start accumulating those points towards the draft, and then hopefully get a high draft pick, and that'll help next year too, right? Like forget about just everybody coming back, having some continuity for the first time, not an Olympic year, people getting healthy, all of that sort of thing. This Torrent squad right now looks like they're in great shape to pick a really good player at the top of
yeah.
next year's draft. So that'll help them out as well. Anything else that you want to bring up or talk about before we close out here, Charles?
No, I think we kind of. Well, actually, yes. I will close with this, and it's maybe more of a statement than anything else.
It's fine.
That it's gonna sound really funny because it like links back into this being an entertainment business, right? But also people want. I think every other way, every other avenue, to an extent, right? I know some people are unhappy about the things I'm going to mention in different ways, but I'll get through it. In so many other facets has this franchise been successful.
Mm-hmm.
The league had no idea they were going to be this popular merch wise. They cannot. I don't know if I've said it on the show. I had someone who works in retail in that capacity at Climate Pledge tell me the reason they don't open, or well they have been now at games, but they didn't open more stores than just the layer at Climate Pledge was they didn't have enough merchandise to fill more stores than
Yeah.
just the layer. Like they cannot keep up with the demand. They couldn't keep up with the jerseys for so long. Like so that I mean the attendance is easily the best in the league. They kind
Yeah.
of edge out Vancouver, which is great to see the West Coast expansion team. So there were folks early on who said the West Coast wouldn't do it, and I was like, Dylan, I had to remember not to say anything mean. Can't say anything mean. But like, come on, so the expansions, like the fan dedication, the fan excitement, like they're showing up. It's one thing to like be excited and talk about a team. It's another to go out and show up. and fill the building. Like that Ottawa game, whoa, my voice. That Ottawa game was oh, where'd you go? Hello? Uh okay, it was Sunday, but there was a great crowd. It was Ottawa. Like it
Mhm.
wasn't Boston. It wasn't this fleet team that's like fantastic. It wasn't Montreal, Marie Philippe Plin. It was Ottawa. And not to diss too much on Ottawa, but like they're not the team I'd expect to draw that crowd. And it was a great crowd. It was like
Right.
what 16,096 or 16,696. Like you're
Yeah.
like we were in the press box and I was like, hey, there's people in the 300s. Like this is not necessarily the game I would expect it to be that way. And I can almost guarantee you will be similar sort of fashion, especially because it's Vancouver, Minnesota, Montreal in the final three games of the season because you get that nice little homestand. I've talked to several people like front office. I don't mean Megan Turner. I mean
Yeah.
and to her too, but like folks who work in the business side of things. It's been really successful for them.
Mhm.
Like, I think every other way besides the results, which is difficult because people want results, this franchise has been a success. So that's
It has.
great. If it was the team wasn't getting wins and people weren't turning out to games, Dylan, and people like didn't care, then it would be a problem. But like this has been such a unique thing. Because don't get me wrong, as someone who covers, where are they behind me? Oh, well, Sue's there. Like someone who covers the Storm and the Rain, like Storm have great support. The Rain. I
Mhm.
wish there was more of a crowd. It. You could, as with how busy the sports market is around here, and how it will be when men's basketball comes back. Like you could certainly be concerned about there not being the attention. And don't get me wrong, I think they still deserve more attention. Um, but yeah, it's been successful in so many ways, which is great to see. I just wish they had more wins to celebrate, and maybe that's what makes the wins more special. Like that Boston game, I was thrilled. I was like, "Hey, you just took down Goliath,"
Yeah.
and there was a great crowd on hand.
Yeah.
So yeah, once they get eliminated, once the gold plan kicks in, you hopefully will have the building packed on April 18th, April 22nd, April 25th. Wow, they're all really close. A climate pledge to get points that you need to take a Harvey or a Layla Edwards. That will be big. So no, I really enjoyed this team dome. Like the atmosphere
Me too.
at Climate Pledge is different for these games. Like a lot of people feel really home. Like hockey is seeing a big boom to an extent. There's still their issues.
Yeah.
But this team feels like home for a lot of people, which is wonderful, which is what you want to see. I just wish that they had like a Walter Cup run to celebrate, but in due time, right? When we're here, Dylan, next year and we're preparing for the
Yep.
playoff run, like we'll talk about it then. But no, I just like so there's been so much success, which is great to
There
see,
has been.
even with the issues with the bag lines coming in the Climate Pledge Arena, the issues with the lack of merchandise available on hand, or like they don't even have open practices. That's a league
Mhm.
thing too. Um, it's so much of it's been great. I just wish they had more wins to celebrate, and even the players, because there's a great group of players too. It's not like any of them are difficult to
Right.
deal with. We've been around them, and they're always happy to do stuff. They always seem to interact well with the fans. Um, you know, again,
Yeah.
a lot of success. Just wish they had more results.
No, I'm glad that you brought it up, because yeah, it has been phenomenally successful. The games are incredible. The atmosphere at Climate Pledge Arena is incredible. I've heard from so many fans, that are, say, Kraken season ticket holders and Torrent season ticket holders, about how warm and welcoming and different the environment is at a Seattle Torrent game. And I've never heard anybody say anything bad about going to one of these games. Like
Right.
it is such an amazing atmosphere that the fan base has cultivated, that everybody comes together and supports this team. I would have absolutely zero hesitation about telling anybody and recommending to anybody to go and check out a Torrent game if they had never gone to a hockey game before, right? Like I would be like, hey, check out the Torrent. I think it's a great, warm and welcoming atmosphere. Great for everybody. I'm with you. The attendance has been phenomenal. Over 125,000 people have come through Climate Pledge Arena so far this year for the games that have been there, averaging 12,500. I mean, that is a massive, massive number for the PWHL, for women's sports. I mean, and it's a number that's growing, right? Like the games lately have been higher than that. Like the average is going to continue to rise as the season goes on. We sit up there on the press bridge for both teams. There are certainly nights where the announced attendance for the Kraken is one
Yeah,
thing and the visual, doesn't always back that up. I think there's been some games where the Torrent have definitely had a better showing than the Seattle Kraken, even, at least to my eye, right? Like, it's very anecdotal. Don't quote me on
sure.
it, but it feels that way. And I think that that's an incredible thing. Really proud of Seattle for showing up and supporting this team that the way that they have been, and it is a reason why I also think that, yeah, you're going to be able to bounce back after this year. There's just so much that goes right everywhere else around
Ooh.
this team. It's going to be one thing, where they're going to be able to figure it out.
100%, and that's like I know it's not the ultimate deciding factor, like, shoot, who is it? You don't look here. Sorry, I'm trying to pick someone who I would, we're not role playing. Weird. But like, you're not a free agent, you're sitting at the table, you're like, huh, they really show up very well. That's it. I don't need anything else. That's why I'm signing it. Like, that's not the
Yeah.
ultimate factor, but we've heard Dylan throughout the year, whether it's post games, pre-game, well, obviously post games, they don't players don't talk pre-game about players, and I've talked to like Lexi Agia after the I think it was the Toronto game right before the Olympic break, talked about the crowd and how much like she's never had something like Julia Gosling has never like talked about that. There've been a bunch of different like Hillary Knight when she was injured, she was on the press bridge. She was like, "Hey," she's posted stories about it's like Seattle's different, and that's
Hmm.
like why I was not shocked when she went on and touched more Megan Rapinoe and Sue Bird's podcast and said, "I want to be a Torrent for 2 more years." Like all respect to all the other franchises, but and the numbers are there. They're not
Yeah.
showing up like Seattle. The building's new, the facilities are new. I'm sure that, like anything, Dylan, you always wish there was some better. You want to improve.
Hmm.
But like Lexi talked at length about the support here and playing in the packed barn and how like so many of these players have talked about they've never done that.
Hmm.
They've never played in front of like Mara Wagner, I think also talked about how she's never played in front of this many people and it's daunting. Like,
Yeah.
you know, um and Lexi's fun fact, we could do a whole thing maybe as the season goes on about I don't know, maybe that's for my channel, but like about who we think might stay,
Yeah.
obviously in fact, but she signed to a 2-year deal. Lexi G has
Hmm.
signed to like given that she just adopted the dog here. Like those like the contract, the dog, and the I wouldn't be surprised if Lexi G is here next year.
No.
She's getting more ice time here. Like
Yeah.
she like when we talked about Alex Carpenter and who can catch up with her, at one point, in probably a few games, Lexia Gio was playing first line minutes.
She was.
Um,
She
right?
earned them
So like
too.
the showing out does matter. I want to say that because
Yeah.
sometimes fans maybe don't think they're not appreciated. Like these players notice.
Hmm.
Trust me, they notice. Um,
We hear it from the visiting teams too, right? Like the
oh,
visiting
100%.
players come in and they talk
Uh,
about how cool it was to play in front of
right.
that many people, sell out
Yep.
crowd, all that kind of stuff. Like it, not to put words in their mouth or anything, but it
Uh,
does genuinely feel like you get the idea sometimes that, like, it's a moment where they realize that they are a professional athlete, right? Like, because you
oh,
grow up and you think about this, right?
I know
Like
you're trying to get us out of here, but I have another story about that though.
okay. Yeah, go for it. Go
Um,
for it.
I don't think she'd be mad at me sharing this. I remember
You could always
after
leave the
Torrent
player anonymous.
well, no, because I have already
Okay.
posted what it was. So like people who are like intuitive enough could figure it out.
Yeah.
But I remember after a Torrent practice, I had to be a climate pledge at Kraken Community Iceplex for the day because I streamed the UW women's hockey games. And I was like, let's go to Dick's Sporting Goods right across the street, right? If you've never been to Northgate, Dick's Sporting Goods is right across the street from
Mhm.
Kraken Community Iceplex. because some people had been posting the Torrent merch was over there. Like some of the jerseys had gotten over there, which is kind of funny because they're trying to keep them in the store in the first
Yeah.
place. Um, they I posted because there was a whole adult sized line of Alex Carpenter jerseys. And
Mhm.
again, people just wanted jerseys at that point. They didn't care who. I said, hey, on the CSS account, I said, hey, here's some Carpy jerseys, like at the North Gate, Dick's Sporting Goods, if you need jersey. The next day, I don't know if it was after practice or what, I don't remember. Time is fake. I get tagged on the CSS account in an Instagram story. I said, what in the world is this? It's Alex Carpenter's partner, Steph Klein. And there's this picture of Alex Carpenter, and I didn't realize this detail. I'll add in a bit. Her eyes are really red. Her eyes are like puffy, right? And it's her. She's got Alex Carpenter's signature smirk. Have you ever
Mhm.
seen Carpenter? She's always kind of got this smirk going. Um, and the caption, I'm sure I can find it while I'm talking because I talk a lot. But it was like seeing your jersey for the first time in the wild in your pro career, and it's just like, think about that, Dunn. Think about how much we've talked about Alex
Yeah.
Carpenter, how good of a player she is, and you know, and like seeing your jersey sold at Dick's Sporting Goods for the first time in your 10-year pro career. And like I just thought that was wild. Like they had gone to just go to a sporting goods store and see your jersey in the wild for the first time. And so and recently I did talk to Steph, and she said, yeah, Alex cried. Like that matters. This stuff matters. Like having your stuff out in the wild, or like, the support, so on and so forth. It does matter to these people. Um, because yeah, you talk about them, wanting to be feeling like pro athletes. Like Seattle certainly hasn't treated them, the fan base at least, right? Like again, I'm sure there's some things where you'd want things to be better, but Seattle certainly hasn't treated them like anything lesser, especially with the.
Yeah.
I'll try to not. I won't be like shady or anything, but there were the reports of a Chicago expansion team playing in a building that's 2,000 capacity. Like that's certainly very far from what's happening here.
Yeah. No, it is for sure. It's been again, it's been so amazing to see. There's just there really is at times no words to describe the feeling that you get at a Torrent game. Watching the crowd and watching everything and how it's all gone. And yeah, just really happy for the team, really happy for the fans, everybody involved who gets to enjoy it. It's been incredible. It's been incredible. Even though the standings don't necessarily show it, it's been an incredible season for sure. Still have 7 games to go here on the season, Charles. 4 on the road, then those last 3 at home that you mentioned earlier. We'll see how the Torrent go and perform during those. We'll see how things shake out down the stretch here for the team. But we do have to wrap up this podcast. Thank you so much for joining me, Charles, yet again. Thanks so much, everybody, for listening, and we will see you all next time.